You probably noticed that Kamala Harris has been doing some more interviews lately. Have you noticed that? She went from doing like 0 interviews to doing 4 or 5. Now, the problem is that they're not tough interviews, right? She's going on The View, she's going to friendly outlets to do these interviews because, of course, she can't stand up to the scrutiny of a tough interview. So she's doing all these softball interviews instead. Now, my friends, the problem with a softball interview is that you still have to be able to hit a softball. And as we've learned from Kamala Harris over the last couple of days, she can't even do that. And, you know, if you notice, there are a lot of folks, not just me, not just the president, but a lot of our campaign staff, and we're feeling pretty excited about this campaign right now. And in part, it's just we're getting down to the final stretch. In part, it's because we feel the momentum of Pennsylvania and some of the other critical states. But you know, in big part, it's that every time Kamala Harris opens her mouth, we gain about 100,000 votes.
All right, guys, so we got to react to another portion of this interview between JD Vance and liberal Trump deranged New York Times reporter Lulu Garcia Navarro. And this part of the interview is actually important when it comes to what people actually care about in this election. Now, the New York Times has advertised this interview and the mainstream liberal media has reacted to this interview, but they decided to talk about the portion of the interview that is the least relevant to what voters actually care about, right? They decided to talk about the 2020 election. Now, the part of the interview they didn't want to talk about or they don't want to address is the part of the interview where they talk about topics like, for example, illegal immigration, in which JD Vance schools this New York Times reporter on why we need mass deportations and also why we do not need illegal immigrants for slave labor, right? Because that is one of the arguments that Democrats have now defaulted to, which is to say, well, if we deport all the illegals, who's going to pick our cotton, right? Which is hilarious because these are the same people that claim that, hey, we're not the Democrat party of slavery. We're not the same party, right? We've changed, except they haven't changed, right? Because again, one of the main arguments they use in support of mass illegal immigration is cheap labor, right? So JD Vance is going to educate this liberal on why he rejects the idea that we need illegal immigrants to pick our cotton, right, and to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. And I think that this is another masterclass from JD Vance, right? JD Vance really is balancing out the Trump ticket in ways that Tim Walz utterly fails to do for Kamala Harris. And you're seeing the difference between JD Vance and Tim Walz. And it's hilarious to me because the mainstream liberal media, these are the same people that were claiming that JD Vance was the worst vice presidential running mate pick ever, right? He's so terrible, okay? And Tim Walz is so great. Now, fast forward 2 months, we're seeing that JD Vance actually was a pretty damn good pick for Trump, and Tim Walz was a pretty bad pick for Kamala Harris. So without further ado, let's get into it.
How long do you think it would take to deport 20 million people? Because President Trump has promised to deport as many people, undocumented people in this country as there are. So what does that timeline look like for you?
Well, I don't think you even have to deport every single one of them because a lot of them will actually leave the country willingly if you make it harder for them to work, right? So I think that you have to combine, and again, President Trump and I really think this is necessary. You have to deport a large number of people. There are way too many illegal aliens in this country. You have to reestablish some deterrence and law enforcement for people coming here illegally. I think it's certainly reasonable to deport around 1 million people per year in the United States of America. Now, of course, we have 25 million. So that would take a long time, 25 years, if my math is correct. But again, I don't think that you have to deport everybody because if you reestablish some semblance of a reasonable border policy, a lot of those people are going to go home willingly. If you make it harder for American companies to undercut the wages of American workers by hiring illegal labor, a lot of those folks are going to go home. I've introduced legislation to tax remittances because a lot of what goes on is that people come into the country, they make money, they send a lot of it home to whatever country they came from. If you tax the remittances, then people aren't going to come here to sort of try to work under the table to begin with. So again, I think the focus here is like somewhat off because people talk about the logistical difficulty of making this happen. Well, again, we have had large-scale deportation efforts in the United States. I mean, look, Barack Obama, to his great credit, deported a hell of a lot more people than Kamala Harris has. So you can deport people in this country who are here legally. You just have to have the political willpower to do it. But if you don't do this, Lulu, I mean, what are you're basically saying the United States doesn't have meaningful border policy. I mean, Mexican drug cartels have become the wealthiest criminal organization maybe in the entire world because of what Kamala Harris has done at the border. Not to mention, like, I'm a big believer in the social contract in this country. Like, I benefited sometimes from a generous United States government, meaning a generous United States taxpayer that made it possible for us to afford things that we wouldn't have always been able to afford. So when you bring in millions upon millions of people, you degrade and destroy the social trust that's necessary to support any kind of a modern support for poor people, food assistance, housing assistance. You are not going to have that stuff if you allow millions upon millions of people into this country illegally, and then they get to take advantage of it.
Well, let's say you were successful in carrying out those mass deportations. One thing that everyone agrees on is that more housing is necessary in this country, right? The reason that there is a housing crisis is that not enough houses have been built.
And that we have 25 million people who shouldn't be here.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
I think it's both.
I know you do. I don't think that many people who look into this agree with you, but about a third of the construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large proportion are undocumented. So how do you propose to build all the housing necessary that we need in this country by removing all the people who are working in construction?
Yeah, so before JD Vance schools her, right, with his answer, because that's what he's going to do, I just want you guys to notice how articulate JD Vance is, right? I mean, it's like night and day between him and Tim Walz at this point, okay? I'm just saying, JD Vance is a beast, man. He really is a beast. But anyways, this is hilarious to me. Notice how the first follow-up question to JD Vance explaining how we're going to conduct these mass deportations and why we need these mass deportations. And one of the things that he says is that, hey, we have to basically stop incentivizing people to come here in the first place and incentivizing people to stay here, because a lot of illegals, they do come here, they work, and they send the money back to Mexico, to Colombia, Venezuela, to their home countries, right? So again, they're taking money out of the American economy and sending it to another economy, a foreign economy abroad, right? So we have to get rid of the incentives, okay? We can't have social services be used on these individuals. We cannot be facilitating and subsidizing them coming into the country and working. That's like one of the main things that we can do, okay? We also, logistically, we can get it done as well, too. We don't have to deport them all at one time, but we've done this before, right? We've done this under the Eisenhower administration. Yes, it was controversial. Yes, I know the left, they're going to crowd racism. They're going to boo-hoo about it. But I'm just saying, we got a lot of illegals living in shelters, okay, living in these places that are being paid for by the government. Hey, that's one of the first places I would start, right? Also, all the illegals who commit crimes, if you commit any crime, you're out automatically. One strike, you're done. You're out. You go. Okay? We can clean up a lot of illegals via just doing those very simple things, right? Just using some common sense. And I don't care about the left boo-hoo whining and cry, oh, you deporting the family. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the type of imagery that people need to see in order to deter people from coming here in the first place. Again, it ain't about being heartless. It's not about being a bad person. No, I'm not a bad person. I just love the American people more than I love the illegals, right? I mean, it is what it is, okay? That's just what it is. I'm just pro-America, okay? I'm going to look out for my own before I look out for others. It is what it is. Love thy neighbor to me means love thy American neighbor. It doesn't mean love thy illegal immigrant, right? That's not what it means to me. These people, they always try to selectively use the Bible against Christians, right? They try to say, oh, well, you should be for having open borders, right? It's like, nah. First of all, you people don't believe in the Bible. So don't try to use a book that you don't believe in against me, okay, to guilt trip me into getting on board with your policies. But again, notice how she can't really rebut what he's saying, right? Because he gave such an articulate and good answer. So the first follow-up here is, well, who's gonna build our houses? Who's gonna pick our cotton? Right? Who's gonna be our slave labor? And it's like we don't need illegals for slave labor. We don't. And we're going to get deeper into that. But I want JD Vance to explain to this woman, okay, who's gonna pick our cotton, right, if we deport all the illegals.
Well, I think it's a fair question because we know that back in the 1960s when we had very low levels of illegal immigration, Americans didn't buy houses, didn't build houses. But of course they did. And I'm being sarcastic, of course, in service of a point, Lulu, the assumption that because a large number of home builders now are using undocumented labor, that's the only way to build homes. I think, again,
the country is much bigger.
A fundamental.
The need is much bigger. I mean, I'm not arguing in favor of illegal immigration. I'm asking.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You are arguing in favor of illegal immigration, right? That's what you're doing. Because the obvious answer to that question is, well, Americans will do those jobs, right? We don't need illegals to do those jobs. We can replace those people with Americans, a lot of whom are unemployed and should be working those jobs. And we can incentivize them to work those jobs by cutting back on some of these entitlements, okay? So yes, you are pro-illegal immigration. Don't sit here and try to play games. Don't gaslight, because that's the only reason you're following up with this question.
Asking how you would deal with the knock-on effect of your proposal to remove millions of people who work in a critical part of the economy.
Well, I think that what you would do is you would take, let's say, for example, the 7 million prime age men who have dropped out of the labor force, and you have a smaller number of women, but still millions of women prime age who have dropped out of the labor force. You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
to work in construction?
Of course you could.
I mean, the unemployment rate is 4.1%. Most people
unemployment rate, Lulu, this is important.
But most people who don't work can't work in the regular economy. They're in the military, they're parents, they're sick, they're old. They might not want to work in construction.
The unemployment rate does not count labor force participation dropouts. And again, this is one of the really deranged things that I think illegal immigration does to our society, is it gets us in a mindset of saying we can only build houses with illegal immigrants when we have 7 million, just men, not even women, just men who have completely dropped out of the labor force. People say, well, Americans won't do those jobs. Americans won't do those jobs for below the table wages. They won't do those jobs for non-living wages. But people will do those jobs. They will just do those jobs at certain wages. And think about this from the perspective of an American company, okay? I want them to go searching in their own country for their own citizens. Sometimes people who may be struggling with addiction or trauma, get them re-engaged in American society. We cannot have an entire American business community that is giving up on American workers and then importing millions of illegal laborers. That is what we have thanks to Kamala Harris's border policies. I think it's one of the biggest drivers of inequality. It's one of the biggest reasons why we have millions of people who have dropped out of the labor force. Why try to re-engage an American citizen in a good job if you can just import somebody from Central America who's going to work under the table for poverty wages? It is a disgrace, and it has led to the evisceration of the American middle class.
So,
Facts. Again, this is why I love JD Vance. This is something that I've been advocating for. I've been telling people, man, we got a lot of unemployed men. And I thoroughly believe that a man who don't work should not eat. Okay? There should not be one man in this country that is an able-bodied man that can work that's not working. Okay, this is why, again, we need to cut back on the entitlements. When you got 7 million men that decide that, hey, I can work, but I'm just not going to work, that means that we have too much government money being passed around, which allows these people to continue to live, right, to eat, although they're not working. If you're a man and you don't work, you shouldn't eat. That's the honest to God truth. We got young unemployed men. We got teenagers. We got prisoners. That's our labor force right there. Those are the people that can replace the illegals. And I don't want to hear nothing about, well, they don't want to work those jobs. Well, it's not about what they want to work. You are a man. There's a lot of things that you probably don't want to do, but you have to do because you are a man, right? It is what it is. So when you talk about these jobs that stereotypically we think of as being worked by illegal immigrants, just because you have Americans working those jobs, that doesn't mean they have to work those jobs for slave wages. That's also not true as well, too. Let me give you an example. It's anecdotal, but let me give you an example. This weekend, I was in Charlotte talking to one of my friends that I went to high school and college with at UNC Chapel Hill. He owns a landscaping company out near Lake Norman. And a lot of his workforce are Latinos, okay? And I was joking with him. He's a big Trump guy, right? But I was joking with him. I said, well, Democrats say guys like you, business owners, need cheap illegal immigrant labor, and this is why they're pro-open borders, right? I was like, shouldn't you be pro-open borders too? And he was like, no, that's actually not true. He was like, a lot of the guys that I have, one, are here legally, right? He doesn't employ any illegal immigrants, and he pays them more than double the minimum wage in North Carolina. And he says he does that because they do good work. They do good work, therefore they get good wages and they get good benefits, and they love working for him because of that. And what they hate is the open border policies of the Democrats that allow illegal immigrants to come into the country and to undercut those wages, right? They are appreciative of being able to come into the country the right way, to be able to work a job, like, again, in landscaping. Again, we're talking about physical work, okay? Again, stereotypical job that somebody would think that illegal immigrants are working. They do good work. They get paid good wages. They get good benefits. They get taken care of because they do a good job. And my friend, who's the business owner, he's not trying to pay them slave wages because he knows that at the end of the day, if he pays them good wages and good benefits, they're going to do good work, which means he's going to make more profit because the work is good and he treats his workers good. He takes care of his workers. That is how capitalism works, right? That's how capitalism works. If you take care of your employees, if you pay them good wages, then you're going to get better quality work. And if you have better quality work, you're going to get more business. Your business is going to grow. You're going to make more money, right? That's how it's supposed to work. So he was like, yeah, no, I'm not pro open borders. I don't need illegal immigrants to do the job. I need people who are here legally who want to do good quality work in exchange for good wages. So no, we do not need illegal immigrants to do those jobs that Americans don't want to do. No. We don't need that. We have plenty of people here who can do those jobs. We just need to incentivize people to do those jobs, incentivize companies to hire Americans, and again, make it harder to be a man who is choosing not to work, right? It ain't optional for you to sit on the couch and not work and think that, well, I'm too good to do that job, right? There's nothing wrong with doing those jobs. Those are the jobs that built this country. Those are the jobs that make this country continue to run. And there's a lot of dignity in that work. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, we live in a society, because again, we live in an Instagram society where people think that, well, I'm above doing that. I'm above physical labor. No, you're not. No, you are not.
This brings us to another point, because the way that you discuss immigrants has gotten a lot of scrutiny. The Springfield situation in particular, where you talked about the Haitian immigrant community, which we should say they are legally here and allowed to work, and you spread a rumor or helped spread a rumor that they were eating pets, which turned out to be completely false. Off the back of that, there has been an enormous amount of hate, turmoil in that community, bomb threats, kids not being able to go to school.
Why do these people just keep lying, bro? Those bomb threats were debunked, okay? It wasn't some far-right MAGA extremists issuing those bomb threats. Those came from foreign countries trying to meddle in our elections, right? That's where that came from. But they keep repeating these same lies. Again, these people are ridiculous. They make me sick.
Is the trade-off worth it to you?
Well, there's a lot there that I want to respond to, but I want to pick up on the overall attitude, because when we talk about, of course, we can have a conversation. I think we've had a nice, respectful conversation here, but sometimes you can feel happy about the direction of this country, happy about its people, and very frustrated with American leaders. This issue, more than any other, makes me extraordinarily frustrated at American leaders, because American leaders who are talking about Haitian immigrants who have no right to be in this country, and we'll get to that in a second, they talk with such compassion about what's happened to the schools, about what people have been unable to do. Where is their compassion for American citizens in Springfield, Ohio, who now, a community of 60,000 people, there are 1,000 children in Springfield schools who do not speak English. For years, I have heard from the American citizens of Springfield, Ohio, that their lives have gotten worse. Have we talked about the fact that many of them have been evicted from their homes, and then Haitian migrants are moved in, 4 families to a home, massively violating zoning laws? They get
They're
subsidy.
not moved in.
They get subsidies.
They have been attracted there because they're working.
They've been attracted there to violate zoning laws, Lulu. They're subsidized by the local authorities, by the federal authorities, by your tax dollars. So now 4 families are living in a
It's
home.
a Republican-run city and a Republican-run state. Your state.
4 families are living, I'm talking about federal authorities, federal housing right now. 4 families are living in a home. They are paying way more for rent than an American citizen in Springfield can pay. So the American citizens have been evicted from their homes. They are finding housing unaffordable. They are waiting longer at hospitals. Their children are going to schools that are stressed because there are too many kids there who don't even speak the native language. I am so much more concerned by the American citizens of Springfield, Ohio, and I think that it is disgraceful that American leaders pretend that they care about these migrants more than they care about the people that they took an oath of office to actually look after. And when you say that these Haitian migrants in Springfield are illegal, what you're doing is, I think, making an intentional bait and switch, because what most people think when they say legal resident, they think about somebody who comes to America, they get a green card, they come through the proper channels, they wait 10 years.
There's many ways to come to America.
Citizenship. But what happened, it's not just TPS, it's mass parole, which, by the way, has been challenged in court and is likely illegal. Kamala Harris has facilitated a massive amount of migration into American communities, and it is my job as a United States Senator, and hopefully as the next Vice President, to look after the people who are affected when you flood their community with millions, the national community I'm talking about, with millions upon millions of people who shouldn't be here. That is our responsibility. And I really don't understand the perspective of an American leadership class that seems to have so much compassion. And look, the 20,000
And those are
Haitians
Republicans
in
too. I mean,
Springfield.
Mike DeWine came out and criticized you, the governor of your home state.
I'm not talking about Mike DeWine right now. By the way, he endorsed us. But I'm talking about, okay, you got 20,000 Haitian migrants. A lot of them, I'd say most of them, are probably very, very good people. But my compassion and my focus and my efforts as a political leader in this country, it is not for people, however good they might be, who don't have the legal right to be in this country. It's for American citizens.
Last few questions.
Yeah. So this is when she moves on to January 6th and the election. And we can see why. We can see why. Now, again, I find it hilarious because the media, they were saying after JD Vance's vice presidential debate against Tim Walz, in which he basically, destroyed Tim Walz. They were like, well, Trump is probably jealous of JD Vance, right? He's probably not going to have JD Vance out there anymore. And it's like, no. Actually, Trump is rolling out JD Vance even more because Trump knows that he made a damn good pick, right? That JD Vance was a great pick, okay? And interviews like this are exactly what I'm talking about. This guy did a great job of articulating the America First perspective, which is that, hey, no, we're not concerned about the feelings of the illegal immigrants more so than we're concerned about the livelihoods of the American people, because all the media and Democrats are concerned about are the illegals. Well, how do the illegals feel, right? Well, what about the illegals? It's like, well, no. What about the Americans? Okay? And that is a perspective that I think is resonating very heavily with people. This is part of the reason why Trump is surging and Kamala Harris is tanking, right? Because Trump got a bulldog VP like JD Vance that can articulate this message in a way that the American people really can understand and digest, and is pro-America. And it's something that I think is rare to hear from politicians, actually putting the American people first, not worried about everybody else and their needs, but worried about our needs. And what about us? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.